In today's episode of HR Visionaries, I talk to Andrea. We talk about the challenges of a very decentralized organization. Stay tuned. Welcome to HR Visionaries, the show where we discover the truth behind contemporary HR. I'm your host, Benjamin. Join me as I unfold today's talent ecosystem with HR innovators from around the globe. Welcome to the latest episode of HR Visionaries. I'm looking forward to my guest today, Andrea. It's great to have you.
Hi, thank you. Great to be here.
Can you tell us a bit about yourself? Who are you?
Who am I? Right now, job-wise, I'm the European HR Director for the Wonderfield Group, formerly known as the Snowfox Group. So we are in food. We're the out of Asia subsidiary of the Japanese Sencho Group. But obviously, I have a past.
Yeah.
So I have worked a lot in HR consulting. But I've been back on the industrial or rather retail side for the past 4 years.
Okay, can you tell us a bit about Wonderfield? What do you guys do?
In Germany, we're best known under our brand Sushi Circle. Mm-hmm. So we are big in Asian food, rather much focused on sushi in Europe, but we also do fresh fruits in the US. And we do all sorts of Asian ready-to-eat foods, and across the globe we have restaurants. So our CEO recently said he would like to become the Starbucks of Asian food.
Okay, can you tell us a bit about the brands other than Sushi Circle?
Yeah, in the UK we're best known as Yo Sushi and Bento. Bento is also a Canada brand. Snowfruit and AFC are US brands. So we have a bunch of brands, and Sushi Takei is our Spanish and Italian brand. So we have a variety of brands. We also do some supermarket brands for specific retail customers. So there's a bunch of brands, and we've got something quite exciting in Germany called Kubumi. We're just testing it. It's a warm dinner or warm food, Asian food, Vietnamese focused concept, and it's all ready to go, like our sushi shops. So you can go to a supermarket where we have a little store, and then you can grab your lunch box, and it's very delicious.
What's your favorite sushi?
I am actually not quite sure, because I do like some variety, but if I can only have one, it will be the tuna nigiri.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. I'm also very, very simple sushi guy, so I really like sake nigiri. So like plain vanilla, but good.
Yeah, or just sashimi, just the raw fish.
Yeah, also quite good. Have you been to the Tokyo fish market?
No, I have not.
It's a really interesting place.
Probably amazing, I guess.
It's super interesting to see, and it's also super interesting to see how large tuna.
Oh, they're gigantic.
Yeah,
they're like this
massive,
room,
right?
Yeah,
it's massive, and it's like, oh, okay. I really like sushi.
So you like sushi?
Indeed. It's very good. A good starting point for our conversation.
We want to feed the world. That's Sencho's credo.
With healthy food.
With healthy food, yes, and affordable food as well.
Can you tell us a bit about your background? So you haven't worked in your entire life for a sushi company, right?
No. But I did start out after graduating. I did start out in the food industry, actually, in marketing and sales. And it's quite helpful to have seen other functions. And then I, by accident, ended up in executive search, moved into leadership advisory in that area. And after 20 years of consulting, I just felt I needed to do something else. It's just been too long, more of the same. And that's when I moved into a startup company selling coffee. And that's my first HR director job I had. I always say it was my MBA in HR management to work there. And then I moved to Signa Sports United. Everybody obviously knows Signa in Germany, the company that was in the media every single day for about a year, because it was just like a little crime story. What happened. I worked there for nearly 2.5 years, and I more or less closed down the headquarters from an HR perspective.
How did that experience shape you as a person? So it must have been quite a turbulent time.
It was, and we didn't see it coming. It was all very quick, like a hit and run incident, because we did still have a very good financing background from our holding company, but they just cancelled the contract. We sued them, but that didn't really help.
Nothing.
There's no money to get, you won't get it. But it was a very intense phase, emotionally seen, not just because of my very personal and own emotions, but particularly of all the emotions that are going on around you. And everybody reacts differently. There was a lot of fear in the atmosphere. People are afraid of losing their job, which obviously they will lose their job, yes. But then the next step is sort of the fear of not finding a new one. And we had a lot of foreigners working for us. Obviously for them, it's not just an inconvenience not to find a new job. It can mean that they have to leave the country after a while, because they will only be tolerated to look for a job for so and so long. So a lot of fear, a lot of anger towards the company, towards the management also, even though most parts of the management didn't have anything to do with it really. So a lot of emotions that then mix together, like something bitter in a cauldron, where you pour in all the negative emotions, and you have to work with those emotions on a daily basis. Be understanding, be a sounding board, encourage people, coach people, keep it away from your own psyche, and try to be professional and go back to facts. And that really eats up your energy.
Well, I imagine this situation being very intense, and you as, the head of HR, you are in a very, difficult situation, because you just can't leave if there is a great offer around the corner, because you do also have responsibility that, if there's this wind down, you're one of the very last people to leave the ship, right?
Well, indeed, we had to ensure that HR was staffed until the end, and ideally with someone rather senior. But I have to also admit, we had a very nice understanding. So the chief people officer, my direct superior, she left before me, leaving me, the chief people officer, in charge. But we kept every one of the HR team on payroll for as long as possible. So when we started to reduce the paid staff, we literally initially planned for whom do we need to close the business down properly. And there was a certain number of finance executives and employees that we needed, and a certain number of HR executives and employees that we needed. We needed 1 or 2 legal advisors within the organization, and so on. So we went through the different teams, and that was actually very hard too. And again, you need to take this step back and say, okay, I'm not looking at people, I'm looking at jobs. What jobs do we need? And then as a second step, you look who is sitting in those jobs. So if we need an HR director, how many HR directors do we have? Okay, so we've got the chief people officer and the HR director. So one of them should ideally stay until the end. We need someone to work together with the external payroll provider, but we need someone who is really, really good at payroll. How many people do we have who can do that? Okay, we've got 3. We need to ensure one of them stays until the end. That's how we went about it. And everybody who was not on the need to keep list, we literally said, look, if you find a job tomorrow where you can start in a week's time, call us and we'll let you go as fast as you need. You will get nobody chaining you to the company if you've got a new offer, unless obviously we desperately need you. And we were kind of lucky with the timing that literally the majority of those, for example, the recruiters, they started doing different jobs whilst they were still there. They were writing letters of recommendation, for example. They helped the employees, coaching them on their CVs, coaching them on how to apply, where to apply, etc. But obviously, every recruiter who found a new job was able to start that job immediately, which again made them more attractive on the employment market, the job market, because everyone who looks for someone wants them immediately, right? And so we kind of figured it out as we went along.
So when you go to work in the morning in such a situation...
You don't go to work anymore because you don't have an office.
Okay, right.
Right?
Okay, but if you turn on your computer in the morning, so how does it feel? Is it some kind of a bit like on when you picture the Titanic sinking and you're helping people into lifeboats? Is it a bit like that?
No,
like
not
that?
really.
Or is it kind of normal then for some time?
After a while, once you've been doing it for nearly half a year, it's your normal job. But it's not as catastrophic because you also after a while you start seeing the positive results. You get the employees who give you a call and say, can I please terminate my contract earlier? I want a termination agreement because I want to start a new job. And then they tell you, and I've got such an exciting new opportunity. Or some people have always wanted to do something else. Now they finally say, okay, this is now going to make me do something else because I was too comfortable where I was. And now I need to change. Now I can do a big change. And you see people getting lucky. You see people flourishing again. So you have both cases. You have those who tell you, oh, now this is the 40th interview and again I got a rejection and I'll never find a job and I'm so desperate, etc., etc. And then you get the other one that says, hey, I found my dream job.
Yeah.
So it's a wild mixture. And it's not like the Titanic where it's like, okay, right, this is it is sinking, but people will not die.
Yeah, there's some structure in it as well.
Yeah, and before the last ones go off board, the first ones have already settled into their new job. Because it was sort of, it wasn't a big bang, it went over a couple of months.
If you had to rank the most stressful situations in your life, so this wind down situation, where would you place it?
I don't think that was the most stressful situation I've ever had, no.
Okay. And how did you build up that resilience?
For what reason ever, I've always been very resilient. I've gone through a lot of personality testings, working in HR consulting, so I was the guinea pig for loads of them, and apparently I'm off the scale on resilience. I guess it has a lot to do with how I grew up. I moved house on average every 2 years, changing countries too.
Why is that?
My father's job just made it necessary to move around a lot. And
what did he do?
He was with the Navy.
With the German Navy?
Yeah.
Okay, so you moved alongside the coast of Germany all the time?
No. More like to America, to Germany, to England, to Germany. And so change is the only constant that I've ever learned. So for me, change is normal.
When you then found yourself in your new job, how did you leave that situation of a wind down behind and, prepared your mind for something new, for something growing?
That actually was probably the hardest bit because I only had 10 days break in between. And I would have loved to have a bit more of a break. But as always, when you find a new employer who likes you, they're like, can you start tomorrow? Well, totally understandable. A question I will always ask myself, probably as hiring manager. But I don't think it's something that you finish off with emotionally that fast. It probably did help to jump into a growing environment with lots and lots to do because of integration work. I've always enjoyed integration work a lot. I mean, in the end, it's all M&A, right? The last time it was just closing down, selling and closing down. Yeah. So it was just sort of the more positive side of the same medal. And it just feels great to be somewhere where we're building and not tearing down.
Can you tell us a bit about, well, the structure of Wonderfield? So I tried to...
It is literally it really is complex. So you have the publicly listed Japanese Zensho Group, listed on the Japanese stock market, and they run all Asian activities out of Japan. But then they have the rest of the world, and the rest of the world of Zensho is called Wonderfield Group. The rest of the world headquarters is based in London, so that's where the Wonderfield Group Limited is based. Then the Canadian, US, American, and European and Australian units report into London.
So I'm not at all familiar with restaurant business at all. When I talk to people who run HR for manufacturing, for example, you have like plants, and you have in like 10 different locations in Germany. You have in all locations, and in every location, like 2,000 people, 20,000 people in total, and there you go. It's very different in the restaurant business, right?
Yeah, we do restaurant business and we do supermarket business. So we have shop-in-shop solutions. We call them, in Germany, they're called islands. In the UK, we call them kiosks. So if you want to buy sushi, a lot of larger supermarkets will have a kiosk inside, either with Sushi Circle on it or with some other supplier of sushi in retail. So we're more like retail industry, really. So we've got lots and lots of small outlets with 2 to 4 employees. Currently it's 283 in Germany, for example. So they're dotted all around the country. And then we still have 2 restaurants, but they're not that many. But it's more like running a retail business, because you've got more sites, they're smaller, and obviously you don't produce, you're not a production, but more of a retail facility.
Okay, let's dive into that a bit. I think that's incredibly interesting. So you said it's around 280 in Germany, and you're responsible for Europe?
I'm responsible for Europe. So that is currently continental Europe. So that's currently Germany, Spain, Italy, Finland, Norway, Latvia. And we're moving into other European countries soon.
And how many people are there? So like 280?
Well, some of the business is franchise business. So it's a mixture. But here in Germany, we are around about 800 employees.
If you don't mind me asking, how does it work? So how does it work so you have very many different locations. So you don't have any kind of clusters, but it's very spread out. How do you, stay in touch with employees?
Very hard, very hard. Obviously, most of them don't even have an email address because they don't have a desk job, right?
How do you reach them?
We can literally only reach them through our trainers and our operations team. So obviously there's a structure, there's the simple job employee, then there's somebody who heads the local team, an area manager, a regional manager, and a head of operations. So that goes through the hierarchies, and all the information needs to go through that hierarchy. We also have trainers out there. We've got who jump around. We've got food safety employees who travel around and ensure the food safety and quality. So there are people out there who train these people, but obviously, no, we can't. I always say it's not the LinkedIn bubble, because they can't work from home. They do not have their success stories posted on LinkedIn. We cannot do Friday afternoon beer pong with them. All those office benefits, the fruit basket, for example, all of that will be nothing to them, right? So yes, indeed, it's very hard to show these people appreciation, to keep them motivated, to give them a feeling of belonging is incredibly hard. And I think not many have come up with brilliant ideas.
I wouldn't even know where to start. So I wouldn't even know where to start talking about the challenges, because it's like, so if everything is so spread out, there's...
Oh, and we have a language barrier sometimes too. So a lot of people are not fluent in German. So obviously we need to translate a lot into the languages that are most spoken. But I'm quite proud. We just recently had a global employee satisfaction survey that obviously was done online. I immediately shouted out and said, dear colleagues, 90% of my staff based in Germany, they do not have an email account. So they will never receive that link. What are we going to do? And then they came up with a QR code, which was a brilliant idea. But it was communicated at very short notice because they only came up with it quite late, and there were some technical bugs, etc. So the return ratio was abysmal. It was very, very tiny. But we also did a survey ourselves, only for the German team. And we prepared that very diligently. We translated it into 2 other languages that are mainly spoken in the company. I personally explained it in great detail to the regional managers, kindly asked them to communicate it to the area managers, gave a lot of written information to those people who do have emails, email addresses, and we then handed out that survey that was very short. It's like literally 2 pages, but in 3 languages, so it would have fit onto 1 page in 1 language. And we handed it out as a paper and pencil exercise, which is very old school, but that is what reached our team members. And the deadline to send it back was yesterday. And I'm incredibly proud that we've got a huge pile of returned surveys. So with a few questions that we asked about how satisfied they are with their job, what kind of is the psychological problem for them, things like that. So they responded. Just the fact that they responded is almost a little triumph already, because they could have just said, I don't care what headquarters wants to know.
Absolutely. And I need to ask one question. I didn't fully get that. So so the sushi, is it also prepared then?
They prepare the sushi on site. Yeah, so it's fresh sushi. It's ultra fresh.
Okay, right. So that also means so people are very specialized who work there, so who can handle raw fish.
Well, I think it's something that most people will be able to learn. They tried to teach it to me in 2 days, and obviously my sushi looked horrible. But I think if they'd given me 2 weeks, it might have looked okay. But yes, we do employ a lot of employees who find it hard to get into the job market because of language skill problems, etc. And in our company, they find an opportunity to actually get into work in the German work labor force.
Okay, so the reason I'm asking is, so So you need to have people who are very reliable, who have a great skill set to handle raw fish. So that also requires you to find the right people in the first place who are very reliable.
We have a large recruiting team who only focuses on finding people for our shops. And a lot goes by recommendation. So it's a family business kind of thing. Sort of like one person in the family starts and then says, look, my wife also needs a job, or my brother needs a job, and then they sort of come in. We recruit via Asian job fairs, or we even recruit people locally in Asia. So yeah, it's a thing that needs a lot of input, in the sense of, obviously people don't stay for ages. Some take it as a first step into the German labor market, and then once they realize their language skills have improved and they can maybe get a better paid job somewhere else, they will leave for that.
Well, probably people are best described as frontline workers, right? So
or shop floor.
But how do you find out if people are frustrated, if people have problems, I don't know, accessing their payslip, for example? So
those who don't want them by email, get them by mail.
Okay,
so
right.
we're still we allow old-fashioned things right now, still, because they're so low-tech, obviously.
And then if people are like, okay, I don't think the number's right, how do they then get in touch with you?
On the phone. They'll call us. Yeah.
Okay, but it all sounds to me like incredibly difficult to organize and to make sure that, well, there's kind of a certain service level for everyone.
We have a team of 2 people working for our service provider around payroll, and there's like 2 people 100% working for us, because it's so much workload with so many people. Yeah.
Wow. It's crazy but necessary.
Absolutely, yeah. They do an excellent job. It's a wonderful team, and but yeah, they also get frustrated occasionally because of the language barrier, etc.
But well, it's I hope you don't mind me asking all these basic questions, because as I said, with regards to retail, I'm not familiar at all, but it all sounds like very challenging in terms of communicating to people on the ground.
It is,
being aware of problems, being aware of also development opportunities, and then and then suddenly you guys need to rehire someone for a certain location, which comes kind of out of the blue, because you don't have the benefit of kind of already recognizing, okay, this is maybe a person who is very likely to stay, this is a person very likely to leave the company, that you all don't know, right? So, but it's like kind of a surprise, hey, we have to hire that location and fast. Yeah. Because you don't have the luxury of a large team on the ground covering for a person leaving for some time, but you kind of, if you're only 3-4 people on the ground, you kind of need a replacement imminently.
Well, there is a largish group of people who jump in here, there, and everywhere in those cases. So we have about 30 people who are the backups for these situations, and then they work in this location for 4 weeks, and in the next location for 2 weeks, and in the next for half a year. So we have a few who are on the flexible team, and obviously they get paid slightly better than the other ones, because it's a bit more stressful to constantly have to jump from one location to the next. But we have those.
But it doesn't sound trivialized to organize this.
No. But we do have an operations team who does nothing else, right?
So that means at Wonderfield, HR is a very core function, because you need the people on the ground, you need to organize, and it's all rather difficult.
Yeah, but I have to admit, not everything is considered HR, a pure HR job. So we get the other functions to do their part of the work too. So the operations team, for example, used to lead the recruiting team for their own activities, and they are also the ones who will draw up the work plans. It's not an HR job. And I do firmly believe that everything that has to do with daily business should be done by the business, because they know best what they need. HR obviously needs to do the administration. HR needs to do everything that comes on top of that, all the cultural work, the development work, the strategic operationals, the strategic organizational work, all those things. But I try to get other functions to pull their weight in their very own interest, because I don't want it to be with a heavy HR head that wobbles left, right, and everywhere. Because quite often the function does their own thing, always keeping HR informed, of course, and if they want to do something where they don't know about the legal implications, for example, they should get advice up front. So that's something I find very important, and I keep telling everyone, because before I joined, there was no internal HR function at all. So they weren't used to that. And I keep saying, look, you can do a lot of stuff, but you need to consult with me first, because it might not be legal what you're doing. But then they can create their own procedures.
Well, you already talked about the challenges in people not having an email address, for example.
Yeah.
How do you think your function, HR, will develop over the next few years? In particular, keeping in mind, okay, well, there are some people that are hard to reach through any media or any online means.
Well, I do believe that modern technology everyone has a mobile phone, right? So I firmly believe that we will need to go via that kind of communication channel. I'm just thinking loud, something that obviously is not in the near but more in the slightly further future. Things like getting an intranet that is ideally accessible via an app or optimized for mobile use, so that we can put information there for employees to access via their own mobile phone. I think that is because everyone's got them all the time. Everyone's using them for everything. So why not for internal communications, for spreading news that normally would go via email, for example, or via a non-optimized website. I think that's where you can actually reach people who are interested to connect, and then you need to spread the word through the organization. So their direct superiors who need to have that stronger bond to headquarters, because they're the ones who actually do come in for trainings once or twice a year. They're the ones who will probably have met me as their HR director, and they're the ones who will be getting communication that I send. And if they sort of spread the word that HR is there and that there's activities going on, and that there's corporate culture that is evolving and becoming way more international than it used to be, because the German organization was only acquired a year ago by the group. So there's a lot of cultural change happening, and the further away someone is from headquarters, the less they actually realize that things are changing and happening. So I think my boss always says it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And I think that's what it is.
Do you sometimes think, okay, well, there are other people, well, who have like a more trivial structure in terms of an entire company setup? They are a bit more fortunate than you are. It sounds like an incredible challenge.
Well, thing is, before I worked in a mainly e-commerce environment, so we didn't have a lot of shops. We still have a few shops, but we mainly had large warehouses. And although these people were just across the yard, so the office building was on one side of the yard, and there were parking spaces and the area for the lorries, And then there was this huge warehouse where there were up to 700 employees, so similar size. And although there was this proximity,
it's the same challenges.
It's exactly the same challenge, because obviously they didn't have email addresses either, right? What I could do, yes, I could walk across. I could, management team would have regular on-sites and all staff meetings for the warehouse where everyone was asked to come together, and they'd all stand there and they'd get the communication directly from the manager's mouth, which sounds so much easier, but still you do need to realize that for them, although it's also just a hop across the yard, it's two different worlds. So they have their warehouse life and job, and the managers have their office life and job. And they used to call the office Schloss Versailles, because it was so much prettier and newer than the warehouse, obviously, and it wasn't dirty, it wasn't drafty and all of that, which is natural for warehouse, right? Even for the best ones. And although there's room-wise, it was much closer. There were very similar challenges of getting the people to realize we're one company. Everyone does a different job, but we're still one company. We've got the same core interest at heart. I don't think it's so much easier.
Okay, well, remind me, so this thingy that people were separated to Versailles Palace, there was never a problem, right? So that always turned out perfectly well. There was no revolution at all.
Well, in that specific case, in that organization, not. But yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean that revolution can always happen, right?
Indeed. I was wondering about the level of autonomy you guys have, and so you guys have from the headquarters in London, from headquarters in Tokyo, and well, in those field branches, field offices. How does it work?
Well, if you look at particularly the HR topic, it is quite a local thing when you look at labor law aspects, right? So when we look at the European management team that the Wonderfield Group has set up, there are 4 Brits, 1 Irishman, and then there's 2 country heads, but the only functional European director who is not from the UK or Ireland is me. Because they specifically wanted someone with knowledge of HR management on the European continent. Because they do realize that the legal framework is so different from the UK that they did want a local expert.
When you, when we jump like 5 years in the future.
Oh dear, that's way too far ahead to even imagine.
Okay, let's do 3 years. How do you think HR has changed? Though keeping in mind what you said before, there will be things will be more digital. How will things have changed by that time? By 2027?
Well, I hope they will have changed even more towards the good old think global, act local, because I think that's, for most things, still the ideal attempt to have a global philosophy, a global approach to things, a global culture, a global understanding of how you want to perceive the people function, how you want to work with your people, what kind of an employer you want to be. But then you obviously have to have that at a very high and abstract level, because if your goal is to be the employer of choice, which I believe is the goal of a lot of companies, so it's a very generic goal, but still obviously something to strive for, right? And I firmly believe, having lived in 6 countries, that in every country you will find a different idea, and not just every country, every population bubble really. You will find a different idea of what an attractive employer will look like. So if you just say we want to be employer of choice, it's like employer of choice to whom, right? And then you need to realize, what kind of employees do you want to have? To whom will you be attractive? Whom do you need? And whom do you want? Ideally, find those that you want and you need at the same time, and then become attractive to them. And that will look very different in the US than it will in Germany. And it will look different in the UK again. And it will look different for different types of jobs. And I think that is the challenge, to be attractive to the people you want and need, and then to become their personal employer of choice.
When becoming employer of choice and think about, okay, well, things go more digital going forward, what do you think people should focus on?
I think we do need to focus on having the right digital tools. Ideally, tools that are very intuitive and easy to learn, if you want every employee to be able to use them. And if I look at some existing tools nowadays, they are so complex that even people who studied IT sit there and go, wow, I don't know where to click on here.
Exactly.
Right? Or do I swipe or click? It's like, woo. And obviously, if you've got something like that, how is somebody who doesn't even own a computer, how is that person ever going to handle it, right? So it has to become very intuitive, very easy, almost idiot-proof. But then it also needs to actually work, right? It has to be compliant, it has to be safe, and it shouldn't make people be afraid that this tool is going to take over their job, although some of them might.
That all comes down to, well, we will save some time in, well, some kind of processes we currently execute.
Yeah, particularly the boring, repetitive ones, right? The ones that nobody wants to do. Anything boringly administrative, if that can be handled by a tool, wow. Anything creative I want humans to be doing, because I firmly believe that the human mind is more creative than any AI tool yet. But we will need to implement things that are accepted.
Andrea, I would love to go into a bit of detail here, since I totally agree with you. I think repetitive things can be done by AI, can be done by digital tools. However, we as humans have our strengths too, and I think I'm also positive that we as humans can exist in a world where there are AI employees. So what do you think we as humans and we are HR people are in particular good at? So, and we should...
Empathy, hopefully. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I hope that a human is more empathic than a computer. Also, as I said, creativity. So if there's a complex problem that might have a variety of solutions, and somebody will have to bring in the human emotions. I'm pretty sure if you sort of sit there, you have a problem, a people-based problem, and you want to solve that problem so that the person who has the problem will have the best outcome for themselves emotionally. Mm-hmm. Emotionally, not business case-wise. I'm sure a human will hopefully come up with a better solution than a computer. Because the computer will do some calculations and say, okay, we save 30 cents if we do this. But maybe I don't want to save the 30 cents because I want to do something for this employee to make this employee happier, more stable, and better able to do his job. Or maybe I need to do something for this employee so the employee can stay in the job. And although that will be an additional cost, but in the long run, it's going to be cheaper to keep that person and invest into that person now than having to find someone to replace that person. Obviously, in the long run, if you have a very clever AI system, you can feed it with all that input too. But I think until they're incredibly smart, a human being will hopefully be able to make the better decision and find the better solution.
Andrea, one last question for you. When you think about your career as an HR professional, you have interviewed hundreds, thousands of people.
Probably thousands, yes. I stopped counting, but it has to be thousands.
What are the questions you like most to find out about, what about the important things about a person?
I literally let people converse. So I usually interview in a very relaxed mode and make people relax and welcome. And I let them chat, which doesn't sound like a very strategic approach, but once people feel a bit even too comfortable, most of them will show their true selves. So you get the real personality rather quickly if you kind of let people just chatter. So that some find it a bit of a waste of time. I find it quite useful. And otherwise, I'm very KPI focused, I try to really find out what do people really know, what have they really done. I really go dig into the topics that I find relatively important. So I usually do competency-based interviewing. So I dig into the competencies to figure out, can the people actually do the job? And when I have the impression they can do the job, then I want to know, do they fit in? And it's really interesting how people usually show their true personality. Obviously, there's very skilled interviewers or interviewees out there who are very good actors and they can put on a mask. But not many manage for 60 to 90 minutes to keep on the mask. Most people let slip their true personality in between and then you just go down that path and try to figure out, are they really good fun and relaxed, or are they just sloppy?
Awesome. Andrea, thank you so much again. It was great having you, and many thanks for your insights. It's super interesting what you guys are doing, and appreciate it and love the conversation.
Thank you. It was good fun, and thank you for having me.
And thanks for you listening in, and see you next time.